All right, everybody. So we've got our video now. This is a quick demonstration on the use of slips being applied to the surface of your bowls, or really after this project, it can be applied to the surface of anything. You can do sgraffito on any project in theory, where you have a nice canvas to work with. And the thing that we're gonna kind of pay attention to is some of the techniques that you're gonna see happen right now. And you know, it's as simple as getting a project up on a banding wheel so that it kind of spins easily. You wanna get a bucket on the inside of the thing so that it holds the bowl up so that you can get all the way down to the very bottom edges of your project, or top edges, depending on your orientation. And we are really thinking about the layering of these things and how opaque a layer is, or it isn't, or whatever. So tips, tricks, and techniques. The towel will be on top of the bucket in between the bowl so that it doesn't mess up the inside of your bowl, or if it does, it messes up a little bit. You just have to fix a tiny bit. So if there's not a bucket that fits with your project, if you have one of the more narrow bowls at the bottoms, check in with me. I have something somewhere that we can make work. And this will work with any banding wheel, the spinny thingies, as you guys like to call them, any vessel to hold the thing up, and then really any towel, maybe not paper towels. Check in with me. I have a bunch of these things available. Now we are going to be applying slips to the surface of our projects, and again, we're working with slips specifically, and these will be kept in a different area than the underglazes and the glazes, to hopefully visually tell you that this stuff is different from that stuff that's over there. All right, there's similarities, but it is a different stuff. So what we're going to be doing after our bowls are cleaned up, after our feet or our foot is added, we are going to apply color. Now, admitted on mine, I'm showing you with the black because I already put a layer of the white on to see how it mixed, but I want to put the black on so that you guys can see this in the video nicely here. So the technique is pretty straightforward. We're using our hockey brushes that hold a nice amount of liquid, and we are going to keep the brushes specific to the slips. Like, we don't want to go cleaning this one up and then putting it in the white slip because it's going to contaminate it, and then any other way around. So there'll be at least one brush for each color. And any of the glaze brushes will work as well, the bamboo brushes, but these ones are going to give you some nice layers nice and quick. We don't want to dry brush. We want to make sure that we are loading this stuff on, and it is going to be a fairly satisfying situation because the glaze, the underglaze, the slip is nice and thick, and we want to make sure that we are going back and hitting this thing with the slips while not dry brushing. Now, this sounds kind of funny to say, but it is entirely possible to have a layer that's too thin on top of the surface of anything, and what that ends up looking like at any point is having brush strokes visible after the firings, which is not great. Not the end of the world, but not great. All right, so if you want true opacity, if you want it to be truly opaque and color all the way through, then you got to put a nice good layer. And there's good and bad about this process. Number one, it applies quickly. It should take you a couple of seconds, a minute or so, to apply a layer of color to the surface of your project. The bummer is, especially with the weather the way that it is right now, it is gonna take a few minutes for the first layer to dry. So at this point, because we're using the buckets as well, we can set these things off to the side on the counters, and we can move on to a side project or something else while that guy dries, and then we can leave the banding wheels and the slips there for the next person to use so that you're not backing things up. What we're trying to avoid with these kind of stations is one person slipping their things, walking away, and that thing just sitting there not being used while other people are waiting. So let's be kind and respectful of people's time and the materials and stuff like that. And what's cool about this is once that first layer is no longer tacky to the point where a fingerprint or the slip will come off on the surface of your fingers with a light touch, then you can move on to your second and potentially your third coat if you feel like it's a thin layer. And a rule of thumb when we're looking at working with slips is we want to make sure that we can't see the brush strokes at the end of each individual layer, because that is usually a good indicator that the slip is too thin. So I've got one layer officially done. The second and third layer are gonna look almost identical to what you just saw. You'll probably need less slip for the second and way less for the third, but it is exactly what it is. So at that point, move this thing out of the way, let somebody else do their thing, and then come back to it when you are ready to go for your second coat. Boom, just like that.